Coca-Cola. They have just launched their holiday commercial, and it's radically augmented by AI.
Could the next version of Siri finally be powered by Gemini?
What if your navigation app could actually tailor your route, sort of like a personal travel assistant, and give you visual direction cues as you're moving along?
Why is Amazon upset with Perplexity in their comment browser? Amazon says it has, quote, repeatedly requested for Perplexity AI to stop letting its AI browser comment purchase products on Amazon's site on behalf of users.
According to a new Wharton study, 75% of companies now say that they are seeing ROI from using generative AI.
What happens when AI models try to compete with real freelancers on real freelance jobs? And new benchmark shows they mostly fail.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
That's going great, Annie. How you doing?
Pretty good. I got to ask you, so last week we recorded on Halloween. I am the type of person that November 1st, all of the Halloween decorations go away and it's time for Christmas season. Are you one of those kind of people as well? Ready for the holidays?
100% the decorations went away, except for the pumpkins, because pumpkins are dual service, right? The ones that aren't too spooky, they stick around for Thanksgiving. Everything else was gone. And my favorite day is Thanksgiving because it's the day my family makes me wait until to decorate for Christmas. And I love the Christmas decoration. So I'm after Thanksgiving dinner is my required waiting, and I can barely wait that long.
Got it. So you have not moved to the right after Halloween. You're still a right after Thanksgiving. Well, you know who else is right after Halloween is Coca-Cola. They have just launched their holiday commercial, and not surprising, it's radically augmented by AI. So it's definitely an example of a collaboration between AI and human creativity. The new holiday commercial reportedly used about 100 people to edit 70,000 AI generated clips. So lots and lots and lots of content. Ironically, this is one of those things where people are like, is AI going to replace the humans? It took the same number of humans as their sort of previous campaigns took. Just a whole lot more content to sort of get through and edit. The payoff wasn't in sort of reducing humans, it was really in the speed to production. So Coca-Cola has said that what used to take a year of pre-production, filming, editing, etc., was wrapped up in just a month. And so it let him sort of move faster and explore more creative directions than ever before. But this was not a really beloved commercial, which is sort of an unusual thing for Coca-Cola, because I think most of the time people really love Coke commercials and they sort of spark some nostalgia.
Holiday, polar bears, whatever.
Polar bears in this commercial, but people didn't like the polar bears. Critics say that the results kind of felt a little bit uneven with mixed animation styles, some strange motion as you sort of tend to see in some of the AI generated videos. But I think the key takeaway is that this is what AI enabled creativity looks like now, more and faster iteration, but not necessarily fewer jobs. Have you seen the commercial?
I've seen the commercial. I am not as much of a to look at the details and see that the hair didn't move right. People did say there were a lot of improvements, like the wheels on the trucks that they show were consistent this year, and they were inconsistent last year with the motion of the vehicle. So it seems like the tools have gotten better. I do think this is a great version of the story. People, when you think about super intelligent AI, I think there's some sense of it will do everybody's job. And they're actually like, please make a Coca-Cola holiday commercial and you'd be done. And it turns out there was a lot more work. 70,000 AI clips, all from human-generated prompts. 100 people involved in the editing, the creativity behind the prompt. I think it's a great example of what it looks like when humans collaborate with AI and not to just replace the jobs or completely do the jobs, but actually use it as a tool to create something new and different. Maybe more options to look at, maybe faster to produce than going on set and recording things, or doing traditional CGI. But still, a lot of human creativity and involvement in that process.
For sure. The thing that struck me when I watched the video was that I am a huge advertising nerd and holiday nerd. So I usually love all these advertisements. It already felt outdated to me because just in the last couple weeks, as we've gotten more and more used to Sora and the capabilities that we're seeing in Sora, this felt like it was using sort of the last generation of video editing. So that was kind of crazy just to think about how fast video editing has come just in the last month or so since Sora has been released. But I think all in all, it's not terrible.
And I will say, in Coke's defense, whether you like the commercial, dislike the commercial, like the AI animation, think the AI animation is terrible, they leaned in and what's the saying? Nope, all press is good press. Like whether people are bashing the ad online or praising the ad online, they're talking about the ad online. And that is a win for Coke, no matter what you think of the quality of the ad or how they made it. So good on them for just leaning in, doing something a little different, and getting the reward of at least some press, whether it's positive or negative or a little bit both.
Agreed.
All right, well, let's talk now. Let's go from Coke to Apple. It's a normal transition. I don't know how to make that transition. But could the next version of Siri finally be powered by Gemini? And I will say, my favorite tech analysts are asking the question, will this version of Siri finally not suck? I mean, the bar is pretty low for being a better version of Siri than the current version of Siri. And Apple, struggling reportedly with their own internal models, now reportedly cutting $1 billion deal with Google to supercharge Siri using a custom version of Google's Gemini model. According to The Verge and reporting from Bloomberg, Apple plans to integrate Gemini into its new Apple Intelligence system to deliver a much smarter, low bar again, and a more conversational version of Siri that can reason, summarize, take actions across different apps. But this was actually kind of interesting the way this deal seems to be structured. Again, not public, but I think too big to wait till this is public. Not just handing the keys over to Google the way they had a call out to ChatGPT in versions of Siri today, but this is a Gemini model will run on Apple's private cloud compute infrastructure, meaning all the data stays in Google's data center security and privacy framework. And it's a pretty big model, about 1.2 trillion parameters, roughly on par with, say, GPT-4, and nearly 8 times larger than the largest in-house model behind Siri today, the things that Apple's using, reportedly costing $1 billion for access to Gemini. But of course, in the context of how much money Google already sends to Apple for the search deal, I'm sure there's some ways to nip and tuck and move around, and that $1 billion can slosh much more easily than any other AI player because there is such a big economic relationship already between these two folks. So apparently they were talking to OpenAI and Anthropic, but ultimately landed on Google due to, they say, performance and existing integration advantages. I think the economic deal is probably easier to structure in a world where there is tens of billions of dollars flowing back. And what's $1 billion between friends in the AI world? I mean, it's just not that much money.
It's a rounding error.
It is I mean, it's absolutely a rousing for any of these companies. The reimagined Siri powered by Gemini expected in the spring as a part of a broader rollout of a renewed Apple Intelligence. So there you go. Apple moving from trying to catch up building their own in-house models to partnering with Google, another feather in Google's cap, maybe.
Yeah, it's kinda interesting because I think Apple is, like, kinda known for building their own capabilities, right? And in-housing a lot of stuff rather than relying on outsourced. So, I have to wonder if this is at some level, some sort of, like, declaration of defeat on their AI side, that they know they have to partner with others. But I will say, we have been looking at different sort of foundation models to think about how to integrate some AI into our customer-facing voice AI, et cetera, into customer-facing experience. And Gemini sort of came from behind and has really surpassed some of the other foundation models. This was a big surprise to me, but, we've been evaluating for a long time and testing with different ones, and Gemini is sort of the clear front runner. So interesting that Apple is seeing that as well. And we'll see if this is an area where Google actually can maintain an edge or not.
It is interesting. I think a lot of reports do show Gemini to be a great model. I think the consumer version experience of it, the app that's provided, the integrations, the way memory works or projects work, not as robust right now. They haven't done as good a job delivering it to consumers. But if this becomes part of Google Cloud, where they're really B2B selling an enterprise version, it is a great model. And you could see them really taking on Anthropic, who's really focused on that version of the go-to-market experience, kind of B2B more than the B2C, and seeding that to ChatGPT. But it does feel like they've got a really great model that's kind of underappreciated because the consumer app kind of hasn't kept up. But they're winning a lot of enterprise deal, and Apple would be a pretty big one.
That would be a pretty big one. I think that's the white whale. Well, speaking of Google and Gemini, let's talk about navigation apps. We talked about map functionality last week, and we've got some more news this week. So what if your navigation app could actually tailor your route, sort of like a personal travel assistant, and give you visual direction cues as you're moving along? Google Maps is integrating Gemini AI to improve how you actually navigate. And instead of just plotting a map for you, you can now have a conversation with it, asking questions like, is there a good restaurant along my route? Or can we stop at this place first? While you're either driving or while you're walking. The new capabilities go deeper than voice commands. Gemini draws on the full maps data set. So it's using street view images and business data to reference sort of real world landmarks. And it'll tell you stuff like, turn right at the gas station, rather than just distance metrics, right? And like we all know right now when you're driving and you're frustrated, and it's like head west for 150 feet. And you're like, now I got to know what west is. I have to be able to figure out what 150 feet is, all these things. So this is pretty functional and useful to just say, turn right at the gas station. Google says the features will roll out for free to signed in users on Android and iOS devices. And the company emphasizes that because the system is grounded in real world data and not generated AI flair, the hallucination risk is lower. So that's a pretty interesting thing to think about as well. What do you think about this?
This was so fascinating to me because I think the use case is so clear. We've all been in the car coming home, and I'm like talking to my son, can you look up where the nearest, I don't care if it's a Chick-fil-A or in like a little, we need dinner, like where is a good spot that's not far from the freeway? And such a useful capability and one you need in a conversational mode. Google's got all the data, they've got the routing, they're so well positioned to do this. And I kind of love the visual landmarks. I mean, that's the way we grew up giving directions, but you keep going down the street and you hang a right at the gas station, look for the big church on the left. And then, like, and that's just such a clear and human use case that I kind of love this. I literally went to Google Maps right away and tried to see if I could get the little Gemini button in there, and it wasn't there for me yet. So I'm gonna have to check it out later. But I thought it's just a great example of not AI taking over everything, but just doing the little things that can make your life easier and better. I look forward to a lot of little things like this across the world where AI isn't the LLM you go to ask a question. We're debating, we're having relationships with these bots, but just like making things more useful day to day seems like a great way to apply AI.
Totally. And I think this is like it's an important safety feature because how many times are you like in the car and you're trying to figure out where you're going and you're messing with your phone and you're like, find me a gas station because I'm about to run out of gas. And so it's a pretty important safety feature, I think, to have people be less distracted with messing with their device for navigation purposes and instead just be able to be like, hey, find me a gas station or whatever your question might be.
Yeah, gonna keep me on the Google for a while, the Google Maps versus the Apple Maps for this feature if they can roll it out.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on. Let me ask this question: why is Amazon upset with Perplexity in their comment browser? I didn't see this one coming. This surprised me, to be honest.
Came out of nowhere.
I did. Well, so Amazon says it has, quote, repeatedly requested for Perplexity AI to stop letting its AI browser comment purchase products on Amazon's site on behalf of users. Comment currently allows users to command it to, grab your browser, take control, navigate the site, and make a purchase on your behalf. Amazon argues that third-party agents making purchases should respect its terms of service and that it, quote, provides a significantly degraded shopping and customer service experience. Perplexity counters that Amazon is, quote, bullying it, and easier shopping should benefit Amazon via more transactions. But Amazon prefers controlling, of course, the search experience, the ads that are in there, the cross sell opportunities. They don't like the bot surfing. And I just thought this one was really interesting because as we see more agentic AI, this fight between what the agentic AI is doing on behalf of the user and the sites it is navigating to do those things may not love having an agentic AI do these things on their behalf. So battleground number one, not surprisingly, maybe e-commerce and Amazon. But this was, I really didn't have this on my bingo card, but I think it is a really interesting thing that will emerge in lots of spaces as we see AI agents start taking actions on behalf of users.
Yeah, I mean, I think also not on my bingo card, but once it happened, I was like, wow, it should have been on my bingo card because Amazon has worked, not just Amazon, but all of these platforms have worked so hard on like really optimizing the consumer interface and understanding their funnel and what to cross sell to who and when and all this stuff. And if all of a sudden a AI agent can come in and act on behalf of the consumer and bypass all of that optimization, that's gotta make you pretty nervous if you've sort of built your whole business around all those optimizations. So but there's also a clear tension behind that because it's clear, at least to me, and maybe this is an opinion, not a fact, but I'm gonna state it as a fact anyway, that, like, it's better for the consumer to be able to skip all that crap, right? And, like, instead just be able to tell its agent that's acting on its own behalf, "This is what I want. Please go find it for me," and not have to stop with the speed bumps and get cross-selled, and, "Do you want this too?" and all this type of stuff. So, there's a pretty interesting tension there and fighting words, calling Amazon a bully.
Well, big company, big bully. I don't think it's out of line, that one. I think this is a general tension that we're going to see. It reminds me of the fights about advertisers and kind of Google's AI overview and is it stealing links from Google advertisers who used to get more clicks because it tends to come above the sponsored results. And it's not the same thing, obviously, but this idea that AIs are giving users what they want in a way that disrupts the economic model that has enabled the current generation technology leaders to build a business, whether that's e-commerce for Amazon or advertising in Google's case, I think is a very real tension. And of course, these AI players there aren't ads in ChatGPT or Perplexity comment yet. They're not advertising to you which thing to buy to make money. And so they can do things that were Amazon to do them or Google to do them would lose a lot of money because they have to give up that revenue. I think it's a really good question. Are we ending up at a place that's better for people and not as good for the economic models of businesses? And if so, I mean, other than the fact that it could be a real hit to GDP if we don't have as many of these things going on, it could be a quality of life upgrade. And that seems like the kind of thing we want AI to do, quality of life upgrade, make life easier for regular people just going about their day, doing their thing. And so I do think it'll be a huge tension because there's as like we said, $1 billion is a rounding error in these discussions. So there's a lot of money at stake, but it does feel like an opportunity to make the internet a place that's a little more sane for all of us. And who can't be here for that?
I know, I totally agree, and I think, like, companies have to go back to, like, really competing based on their product, and I think that that's a good thing. That's where the competition should be happening, right? And these AI browsers that can find this is really the best product for you, maybe we'll just get higher quality products and less sort of trash that's easy to buy and consume and is gonna break quickly and all that kind of stuff. So, I think there's a lot of positives that can come out of this. The other question I have about this whole topic, which didn't come up in the Amazon Perplexity fight, but it's like a big unanswered question for me, is about things like consumer consents that are needed. So like if Perplexity can purchase something on your behalf, typically from like a, legal standpoint, we rely on buttons that say like you're agreeing to this terms and condition, you're authorizing this payment, you're doing that. And like the end seller of the product, in this case, Amazon, is the one that's sort of responsible for making sure all of that happens. But now Perplexity can bypass all of that. And Perplexity, do they have a responsibility to do that? What does that look like? There's no regulatory framework or oversight framework for that to happen. So this is an area to me where you see some of the sort of regulatory tension that I think has not been discussed enough yet. Like, I have not heard any regulators talking about how are we going to think about this. And I think they need to sort of catch up and start to think about what does consumer consent and authorizations look like in a world where consumers have the ability to have an agent act on their behalf. So that's an area I'd like to see us catch up on.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I go back to the lending world that we both know so well, and like if an agent were taking out a loan on my behalf, I could have agreed to the monetary terms. But there's a whole truth in lending disclosure that's very clearly defined what needs to be displayed to the consumer before they can choose this. And like, is the agent able to just bypass that, agree on behalf of the user? Have they gotten the consent from the user? I think most of these agents today stop short of completing a transaction. So I would think that what would happen in Perplexity's comment today would stop at the truth in lending disclosure or at the cart on Amazon and go, okay, I've got your cart ready. Come click the button to buy it. Oh, I've got your loan terms available. Come approve them and move forward. But we're certainly moving towards a world where it could complete that transaction on your behalf. And these are really interesting questions about who's responsible for what in that consumer protection world and the consumer authorization world. And yeah, you're right. For all the debates we want to have about super intelligence and when it's coming and what we do about the, Skynet coming alive to kill us all, this is a very practical thing that's going to impact billions of dollars of commerce in the next year. And maybe we ought to spend a little more time thinking about that.
I totally agree with you. That's my main complaint about all the regulations. I'm like, you guys are solving for problems that are 10 years down the line, but we have problems today. Why don't we solve those ones?
Problem is it may be 10 years down the line. It may never happen. We don't really, I can't tell you what this thing will look like. I can't tell you what this thing will look like 10 months down the line, the whole world of AI. So I certainly am not going to predict that, we know the Terminator's coming in 10 years. Although if we did, I would find a different place to be.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's talk about the ROI that we're seeing from AI. According to a new Wharton study, 75% of companies now say that they are seeing ROI from using generative AI. That's a big shift from MIT's study that came out earlier this year that said 95% of projects fail. So, what do we make of these conflicting data sets? Let's dig into it. This new Wharton report finds that generative AI is moving from sort of pilot hype to actual measurable business impact. Nearly 3/4 of the enterprise leaders that they interviewed in this report have said that they have positive ROI from generative AI initiatives. This is up sharply from their report that they did last year. So they did a similar study last year. More than 70% are now tracking structured ROI and say that 46% of employees use generative AI daily, with budgets rising across the board. Executives say that the key isn't the model, it's the management. Strong leadership having buy in and influencing sort of top down, clear metrics about how to measure this stuff, integration into real workflows. That's sort of where the magic happens. So, this is an interesting study, likely shows the results of sort of thoughtful deployment of useful tools, whereas maybe MIT's study headline was more about sort of custom built programs. I think it's like the automate versus augment kind of question. The gap shows how hard, but also how important it is to get the deployment right.
Yeah, this was interesting. I mean, seeing there's all these dueling studies coming out now showing different effects. The MIT one was that the 95% claim they took away was for like custom built models, not deployment of tools that were out there. And of course, custom built models is a hard thing to do well. And usually that's a pretty early stage pilot. So I do think this shows a little bit more thoughtful. And I think you and I have been on this drumbeat forever. So it sounds old, but to us, but I think it is just very true that like the quality of the model is such that it's not really the limiting factor. It is the change management. It is the integration into the workflow and understanding the process employees are going through and how does the AI model fit in. It's the training of those employees and how to use it. It's the understanding of when not to use an AI tool or what the limitations are and putting those guidelines or guardrails into your deployment. And so it's very easy to see how done badly it would go horribly wrong and done well, clearly you can see lots of deployment. And so I just think this is a showing you a little bit how important those non-technical pieces are to the question of can we get real value out of the AI models? And the answer seems to be you really can if you do it right.
Yeah, you can if you do it right. That's exactly right.
We'll end it on that. And then, so last story of the day, we're going to keep in this kind of employment, what can models do at work vein, and ask the question, what happens when AI models try to compete with real freelancers on real freelance job? And new benchmark shows they mostly fail. So this was a really interesting study, came out of Scale AI and the Center for AI Safety. They called this their remote labor index. And it was designed to measure how well today's AI systems can handle real freelance jobs. So instead of like a synthetic prompt or something, or measuring against all the benchmarks we talk about, the Math Olympiad, the science, whatever test, this benchmark used 240 real Upwork projects across 23 different kind of work categories, everything from marketing copy to audio editing or video editing, each with verified professional deliverables. They had humans actually do the task, and then they left AIs to do it and to see if the AIs could complete the and Upwork is it's got a limited scope, like a short duration. It's not like a job. So 6 leading models were asked to complete the exact same assignments, and the results were just overwhelming. 97% of the AI outputs failed basic client expectations. Said, the human reviewed each AI output and said, client would not accept this as an acceptable quality of work. 97%. Common issues included broken files, incomplete work, just poor quality. The few wins came in narrow, well-structured areas like logo design, chart generation from data, or kind of simple audio mixing, tasks with clear, repeatable rules. But this was fascinating because it really highlights this big gap between what I think the benchmarks we so often see show superhuman intelligence beyond PhD level in X and Y and Z and W, and yet not real impact in the world. And I think this is that huge gap where, you know, it's not just completing a math problem that is a job. A job is much more complicated. It turns out when you take the whole complicated thing, it's much harder to do well. And this to me feels like the best possible case of this because it's like a small Upwork task. Like if you actually said, please go to all of Jeff's meetings and listen to everything that's said and figure out what Jeff should do and then do it. Like that's, I think, a lot harder than an Upwork task. And we're still at, 97% failure at Upwork. So I just think it really highlights the models can be extremely capable at very narrowly defined tasks, but maybe not at more broadly defined jobs. And it's a bigger difference than I think many of the people in the AI booster community want to believe.
Yeah, well, and I think definitely bigger than that community wants to believe, but maybe refreshing for all of the people who are worried about AI taking their jobs. Like it actually can't yet. Like it literally it can't do the work. It can help you do your job better and faster and cheaper, maybe, but it's not going to actually be able to complete your job and your task. So your excellence at something, your ability to issue spot, troubleshoot, et cetera, is still really important. And it sort of begs the question if we're moving towards a world where like everybody's job is basically going to become as a reviewer of AI generated work and to be the person who actually issues spots where the AI failed and then fix that thing and take it sort of like the last mile, so to speak, rather than starting from ground zero. But it is also like an interesting thing about the benchmarks to your point. Like we care about the AI having, amazing performance on math tests, but maybe we should start benchmarking it on like usefulness, right? Like, can you do these basic tasks? Okay, no, you don't meet my benchmark then.
Yeah, I think that's what these guys are trying to, I think, develop that kind of remote labor index, a question of for this. And, you've seen some other, there's the length of a software engineering project that a model can complete autonomously. And they've been kind of showing increased scope of that. But I think it goes beyond just reviewing AI model work. I do think it's like, do you understand how and when to use the AI? What prompts to put it? What parts of the task the AI can do really well, and what parts of the tasks it can't? Can you figure out when to use it? What kind of prompts to use? What kind of models to use? How to manage the input? That's a set of skills that nobody has or is frankly being trained on right now. There are I don't care what school you go to, high school or college. Like this is not something people are being trained on, and yet it may end up being one of the most valuable skills for people in the workforce over the next 10 years. Similar to just, I mean, frankly, everybody puts Word and Excel and PowerPoint, but skills and we used remember you. I don't know if people still do that, but it used to be all the resumes. Like, yes, I know how to use Windows and Mac and Microsoft, all products, and like just I can use the tool of the day effectively to do generic kinds of work. And I think this skill set around AI will become one of those skills of like, are you good at using AI to solve problems? Because you'll be so much more productive if you are. And employers are asking for that, testing for that, and looking for that in their employees.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode for this week. We'll be back, as always, next week with more head scratching, what the AI moments, fun stories, ads, and fun press stories. If you have anything you think we should cover, fun prompts you've used, stories you think we missed, please do email us at email@whattheai.fm. And don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a rating or review. It does help other people find this podcast. And if you make sure you subscribe, you'll make sure you don't miss the next episode of What the AI. And we will be back here next week. Annie, I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Ready to expand your AI knowledge? Want to become the go-to AI expert in your organization? Take the next step with Upstart's AI certification for financial services. This comprehensive course simplifies the fundamentals of artificial intelligence for financial services professionals. Both the course and this podcast are brought to you by Upstart, whose leading AI lending marketplace connects millions of consumers to banks and credit unions that leverage Upstart's AI technology to deliver superior credit products, from personal loans to auto loans to home equity lines of credit. If you learned something useful this week, hit subscribe on YouTube or leave us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. Your support can help others discover What the AI. And finally, share your biggest AI questions and insights with us at email@whattheai.fm. We really do read every message, and we do our best to cover them all on the show.